Hi, I'm Deanne Ganaway, the coordinator of the HEA at UQ program. This video aims to help you identify which is the most appropriate fellowship category for you to engage with. When you apply for accreditation as a fellow, you're effectively making a statement about the nature of your teaching practice. You submit this statement to a peer review by trained and accredited reviewers. The recognition of a particular type of fellow is therefore testament that you have met a set of nationally recognized criteria that describes your practice as a teacher in higher education. These criteria are called the Professional Standards Framework. This video is going to be focusing on one element of the Professional Standards Framework, the descriptors. The Professional Standards Framework has two components: the dimensions, which is the set of statements around the areas of activity, the core knowledges that you have as a teacher, and the professional values that you might frame your teaching practice. The other element, or the descriptors, are the kinds of statements that outline the characteristics and describe your teaching practice. These categories are called descriptors because they're essentially describing your practice, which may be varied. You could be a casually employed tutor. You could be a full professor. You could be a professional staff person who's supporting the learning of others. You could be a student who's equally supporting that learning. Because different people engage with different types of teaching practices, these teaching practices are described differently, hence descriptors. So let's explore these descriptors in a little bit more detail so you can work out which one might best describe your practice. Here's the four: Associate Fellow, Fellow, Senior Fellow, and Principal Fellow. A good way to think about this might be Associate Fellows and Fellows lead students. Senior Fellows lead teachers. Principal Fellows lead institutions. The Associate Fellow has a limited set of teaching practices. They're only going to be able to demonstrate an understanding of a smaller aspect of the areas of teaching activity. Associate Fellow only needs to describe 2 of the 5 areas of activity. You also need to have at least K1 or K2 of the core knowledge. That means that you might describe yourself as a master's degree, that you have a master's degree in a discipline that allows you to tutor in this discipline. Or perhaps you're studying towards a PhD in the area in which you're teaching. You would also need to be able to illustrate your knowledge of what constitutes an appropriate teaching practice for this area. That means that you know what's appropriate for you to teach in this space. That's the K2 requirement. You also need to be able to describe any appropriate professional values that you might actually have. Typically, we would see associate fellows taking on the multiple roles illustrated here. In essence, you're not expected to conduct a full teaching role. This is important to note that if you are effectively a course coordinator, even if you are casually employed, and you do actually fill all of the 5 criteria, you should probably be looking at applying at a fellow, and we'll explore that in a little bit further, in a little bit more detail in a minute. Associate fellows typically have a minimum of 2 years experience with some teaching and learning responsibilities, and you will need to be able to illustrate your successful engagement with the criteria illustrated on this slide, with at least 2 examples of your practice in each of these 5 criteria. Descriptor 2, or fellows, are more broad-based. You have a substantive teaching role. You are likely to be a course coordinator. You might be a clinician who actually has substantial teaching responsibilities. Or you could be a staff member who's supporting teaching and learning across the board. You will have to demonstrate that you've got successful engagement, and again, 2 different examples of practice in each of the areas of activity, all 5 of the areas of activity, all 6 of the core knowledge areas, and all 4 of the professional value areas. You would also be required to illustrate that you actually integrate any scholarship or evidence into your practice, that your practice is actually evidence-informed. You also have to demonstrate how you have engaged with professional learning and how you've integrated that back into your practice as well. You would need to provide at least 2 examples of how you successfully meet all 6 of the criteria that are on your screen at the moment. Senior Fellows lead teaching. You have to have a thorough understanding of effective approaches to teaching and learning. You have to provide evidence of all of the activities as for the fellow, but you also have to provide evidence of how you have successfully coordinated, supported, supervised, managed, or mentored others. You lead teaching. It's important to note here that supervision doesn't actually necessarily mean research high degree supervision, but it's rather supervision of teaching teams. As leaders of teachers, your application needs to provide evidence of how you have impacted the teaching practices of others. It's important to note that senior fellowship is not related to how long you've been teaching or your level of seniority or whether you've even won teaching awards or not. It's about how you influence the teaching practices of others, how you manage and how you lead other teachers. You have to demonstrate a thorough understanding of effective approaches to teaching and learning. The Senior Fellow template is actually different to the Fellow and the Associate Fellow. It also requires 2 case studies. At least one of these case studies should focus on how you have led, coordinated, supervised, mentored, or managed other teachers in some form of this teaching endeavor. And you would need to meet all of the criteria that are currently on your screen at the moment. There is a Principal Fellow that we do support at UQ, but not through the HEA at UQ program. Principal Fellows work at a more strategic level. They have a completely different template that they have to fill out because the focus here is about demonstrating a sustained record of strategic leadership. Principal Fellows will have responsibilities that impact across the institution, across faculties. They should be able to demonstrate the influence of their teaching scholarship nationally or internationally. You would have had a successful track record of effectiveness and impact. You're able to critically reflect on your practice, usually over about 7 years of practice. A way to think about this is that if Associate Fellows and Fellows lead students, Senior Fellows lead teachers, Principal Fellows lead institutions. If this is more of an appropriate descriptor for you, then please contact the professional learning team to arrange for further discussion. Thank you for your time. I hope that this video has been of use to you and that you will feel more equipped to decide which of the descriptors is most appropriate to describe your practice. We look forward to working with you in the future.